Welcome to the second Crowe Corner for Family-Owned Business Focus Week. My name's Trevor Ling. I'm the partner in the London office for Crowe, and I'm joined by Kingsley Tedder. Kingsley is currently operating as an independent consultant for a number of EOTs and has worked on a number of EMT transactions over the past few years. Kingsley, welcome. Thank you, Trevor. Thanks for joining me. Kingsley, first question for you. What makes an employee ownership-based transaction such an attractive option for family-owned businesses?
The thing I like about EMTs, it's about control. So you're not reliant on a third party buying your business. With my help and other help from specialists, you can design a transaction that's on your terms. So you're effectively picking and choosing who you're selling to, i.e. your management team.
Yeah.
So it's about establishing an element of control within that sort of transaction.
Then how does that work with the business? How do you normally work with businesses in those transactions? And what's your engagement look like?
So I'm very much doing feasibility studies, understanding, getting under the skin of business owners, what they really want. And most business owners have built their business up over a number of years. So things like culture and their management team are really important too. But equally, it's a commercial decision to sell their business. So every single EOT I've done is a bit different. So it's about really trying to design the right structure and the right format for the owners and the management team.
Excellent. So what do you consider to be the key element of a successful transition?
You really do need to have a strong, profitable, cash generative business. There's no magic wand. This is a transaction that typically is going to involve an amount of deferred consideration. That deferred consideration comes from the future profits and cash generated by the business. So if the business isn't profitable and it's not generating cash, it's very unlikely to be a successful EOT. Management absolutely love EOTs because an EOT, in some degree, is like a management buyout, but it's funded by the owners. So I find a lot of management teams wouldn't entertain a management buyout for a number of reasons. Maybe they can't get funding themselves, or they're not prepared to put personal guarantees in place to get that funding. So the fact that they can do transaction very similar to a management buyout, that the owner of the business is effectively providing the funding, that's a nice thing to be involved in. And from a risk point of view, very little risk on the management teams.
But that relationship between owners and management, so how does that differ from that relationship?
There needs to be a transition from the owner running the business to the management team. Depending on the quality of the management team, that can happen quickly, or if the experience isn't there, it can happen over a number of months and years. No two EOTs are the same, so it's very much about the owner feeling comfortable that they can let out a rope and the management team grabbing that rope and running with it. Doesn't mean to say that they'll get it right all the time, and the owner might pull the rope back a bit. But it's nice to have both owner, stroke seller, and the management team all being aligned to wanting the same thing.
The dynamic, again, you mentioned earlier on the dynamic between management and owner. Do they, how does that ongoing relationship, you've obviously been through some tough times, how does that tend to play out compared to, say, another type of business? Is there a difference?
There is a difference because the moment you do an EOT transaction, you crystallise an amount of money that's owed to the shareholders. And the owners are still involved because they're going to obviously want to see them get their money. And when things start going wrong, it can often bring out the bad in people. But that's all about having a plan and just recognising that the economic climate we're in at the moment is quite challenging. The fact that a business is an EOT or not doesn't really matter. That economic climate still exists. So the pandemic was going to happen to businesses whether they were employee owned or not. It's more just having the right framework in place with an EOT that says, we've got a plan in place, we're gradually transitioning to the management team. Hopefully it's going to take this period of time, but actually if we run into a headwind, it might take a bit longer. But at least we've started and we've got a plan.
But after you've done that, where do you see the next things? You mentioned the uncertain economic climate. With those businesses that have paid off for the you've worked on, what's next for them? So they're employee owned, I've got no more vendor debt. What's the key drive for them?
I think there's all manner of opportunities in terms of if there's the ability to grow a business and sell it at a later date, you've got this wonderful scenario that you've got the business being owned by all the employees. So you can have somebody that's on a national minimum wage or a relatively low salary that wouldn't ever have share ownership, enjoying the benefit of being part of a business disposal. And that's one aspect. The other aspect is obviously the business is employee owned, and if that business didn't want to ever sell, then they don't have to. So I don't think an EOT is ever a barrier for sort of the next stage for a business's life cycle.
Just on a broader question around family-owned businesses, any particular challenges you see beyond the obvious around uncertainty?
I just like having a plan in place. I really like the concept with an EOT that owners can sell and stay within the business for a period of time. So they still have an element of control. I often find that owners like to gradually step away rather than a retirement that's a clean cut. And often that's unhealthy, especially business owners that have been working 24/7 for however many years, and all of a sudden just to go, sold my business, I've got no work to do. It's a nice way to actually sell your business on your terms and gradually.
We've seen some transactions in the press, so there's some obviously large transactions that take place. Not heard so much around the kind of the aftermath. That's something that I think is quite interesting.
Yeah, and I
I
think you've got the whole Employee Ownership Association that do quite a lot of work around this area. So there are businesses that have sold to their employees, the owners have been fully paid and are no longer involved in any way, shape or form. And those businesses have grown and really developed really well, but you probably don't hear much about that unless you're part of the Employee Ownership Association, which is a real shame, because that's for me, looking at a business that is entirely owned by the employees and seeing it grow without the reliance on a small number of shareholders things is a fantastic story. Being employee owned really helps, especially in times we are at the moment. So uncertain times, I find a lot of my clients struggle with retaining staff, recruiting staff, gaining new work. So giving yourself a bit of a differential compared to maybe your competitors to say to your potential clients, we're employee owned. We're not just about one or two shareholders. You often find that you'll win tenders because you've got that differential, but also you can attract staff because you've got some nice tax incentives because you're employee owned, so you can give tax-free bonuses to your staff, but also run a lot of share incentive schemes, PMI schemes, alongside the EOT to really incentivise management to drive the business. So there's lots of things that I think an EOT just gives a competitive advantage over maybe some of their non-EOT businesses.
Thanks for joining me, Kingsley. It's been a pleasure to speak to you today, and I look forward to seeing people again for the third and final Crowe Corner for Family Owned Business Focus Week.